Good morning. We will now call this meeting to order. My name is Claudia Chi. For today's meeting, our flag salute will be done by our Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Boondock.
Good morning, everyone. I'm inviting you all to join me in the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you may all stand. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may all be seated.
Madam City Clerk, can we please have our roll call?
Good morning. To start, do we have Councilmember Boondock?
Here.
Councilmember Nay?
Here.
Councilmember Owens?
Here.
Councilmember Salas? Here. And Madam Mayor Chi?
Here.
All present.
We'll be now going on to the public comment section. A total of 30 minutes is provided, so members of the public may address the council on items that appear within the consent calendar or ones that are not listed on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. If you desire to speak to a council on an item which is listed on the consent calendar or not listed on the agenda, a white request to speak form should be filled out and filed with our city clerk. When you are called to speak, please come forward and state your name for the record. On council business items, speakers are limited to 5 minutes each. And are there any comments, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Madam Mayor. We have 5 non-agenda items. To start, we have Yufa Hagenbach, followed by B. Reith. Yufa, will you come to the podium, please?
Good morning. My name is Yufa Hagema. Watch, Yufa is going to make a comeback. I feel the name is coming back. Okay, I moved up here many years ago. And by the way, can you say the organization I'm from?
President of local group named Temecula Peace and Quiet.
Yes, okay. So I moved up here, like I said, many years ago for peace and quiet and fewer people. So I'm a little troubled by the current trend, I should say over the last maybe 20, 30 years, of more families moving to Temecula. Okay, you know who is not quiet? Children. Children are not quiet. They're noisy, they run around everywhere, they're all sticky. Have you guys been to Costco on the weekend? It's an amusement park there. It is mayhem in Temecula right now. There are children running everywhere all the time, okay? I can't go into Stater Brothers without runny noses and snot and people, they wipe it on you. Okay, this has got to stop. The trend of allowing more families in Temecula, this has to stop. Okay, so here's my proposition. I think this would pretty much solve most of the problems up here. You guys are going to take up a city ordinance. You guys are going to think about a city ordinance that only allows children in public spaces for 2 hours a day. 12 to 2. I think that is the appropriate amount of time. Thank you.
Our next speaker is B. Reith, followed by I.B. Wealthy. B. Reith, please come to the podium.
No, you have to go with me. You always want to stay home, and it's about time you stood up and did something about this stuff. So, good morning. My name is B. Reith, and this is my husband, Dorbert Reith. We're here to talk about one thing, and that would be ozone now. Ozone now. We're fearful that all the breathing that's going on is depleting the ozone layer. So we have this new product available for sale. It's ozone, pure ozone you can put in the air. We feel it would solve this problem. And to just further this point, I have written a jingle just for this product. And if you'll permit me, I know I have 3 minutes. Are y'all listening? Some of you don't look like you're quite listening yet. What? No, I'm not going to say that. Okay, some of you look like you're not quite listening yet, so I think I'll just go ahead with my jingle, and it goes like this. Ozone now, bless our breathing forever. Aren't you singing, Dorbert? You told me you'd sing today. Ozone now, bless our breathing forever. And you can get this little bottle of ozone right here for the genuine price of $5.99. You just have to email us at ozonenow.com. And you can have another one, but wait. You can order 2. All you have to do is pay the extra fee. So if you'll consider this, stop all the building, stop all the breathing, protect the ozone. Dorbert, you were not any help at all.
Next speaker is I.B. Wealthy, followed by Aaron Slughouse-Glee.
City Council, my name is I.B. Wealthy. I own 8 cannabis dispensaries here in Temecula, and I'm really pissed off at you guys for closing me down time and time again. I have to keep reopening, restocking every time you guys close me down. I want to know where my product is. There's at least $200,000 worth of marijuana product that you guys have stolen from me, and the state of California gave me the right to be able to sell this product. You don't have the right to be able to close me down. So what do you say about that? Exactly, that's what I'm talking about. You have nothing to say because I'm right and you're wrong. Are you guys all high? Is that the reason why you're just staring at me? I see the glossiness in your eyes. You guys are using my product, and even those guys, I can see them all. So anyways, I want my product back. You guys are doing something totally illegal by shutting my dispensaries down all over town. Dagnabbit.
Next, may Aaron Skolowski please come to the podium.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aaron Slokowski, and thank you for allowing me to speak to you today about an area of grave concern to me, public safety concern within the city of Temecula. As you are well aware, our city is nationally ranked as one of the safest cities in America. But I have some concerns, and I fear that if remedies are not taken to allay these concerns, that we will no longer be one of the safest cities in America. As a practitioner of yoga, I often go down to Old Town and practice my yoga. My concern is that the sidewalks are made of wood, and in my yoga, I practice without shoes. On numerous occasions, I have received splinters walking through the streets of Old Town. Not only is this a safety concern, but I fear that many people will sue the city over this unsafe practice. Also, the trolleys, the benches, very slick. I have fallen off the benches on more than one occasion and become injured. I ask that you as a council look into this in order to keep our city safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, our final speaker is 99 Problems But Eggs Aren't One. Will you please come to the podium?
Good evening, City Council. You know, today I've got a few issues. There's a few ordinances that need to be set up here that you need to work on. The first one is an issue facing every American. This is a nationwide issue. Actually, it's a worldwide issue. It's an issue at the state level, and it's an issue at the city level. There is this toxic substance coursing through people's veins. It's extremely toxic, and it's called bacon. There's a real issue with bacon. Councilmember Owens, I saw you eating bacon last week. That's a real issue. You know, I have an issue with it. So we need to pass an ordinance because last week I went to the sandwich shop and I asked for a BLT minus the B, and they said, no, that's rude. You can't ask for a BLT without the bacon. And I said, why not? Why not? So we need to pass an ordinance that doesn't allow bacon on anything. No bacon in the city. That's right for me. Who cares about the rest of the community? I don't want bacon on anything. And let me tell you about eggs. Eggs got an issue too. They squeak on my teeth. They squeak on my teeth. And so unless an egg's made in a product, I don't want eggs squeaking on my teeth anywhere. It bothers me. So we need to pass an ordinance where eggs don't squeak on my teeth, okay? And then the last thing is, I don't know about you, but chocolate. Everybody loves chocolate, but chocolate should have peanut butter. Why don't we have peanut butter on our chocolate? Like, I really don't understand. Like, we need to keep these two things together. Councilmember Owens, I saw you eating chocolate with peanut butter last week. I saw you. Councilman Salas, you were eating peanut butter last week too, yeah? It belongs together, right? So what are you going to do today to put these ordinances on the table? There's lots of ordinances we need. These are pressing issues to me as a citizen. I don't care what the rest of the community thinks. This is about me, all right?
This is America. You can't take away my bacon. You are not taking away my bacon.
Thank you. So many brave speakers. Now we'll be moving on to the City Council reports. Reports by member of the City Councils on matters not on the agenda will be made at this time. A total not to exceed 10 minutes will be devoted to these topics. And first, we'll direct it to our Mayor Pro Tem.
Good morning, everyone. Really quickly, I would like to thank City Hall and the real City Council members for giving us this opportunity to shadow them for a few days. It's been an amazing experience. I've never really been involved with local government at all, so this is my first time actually in City Hall. It was yesterday, so I really do appreciate having the City Council members kind of teach me and guide me along this journey. But while I do have the floor, I'm going to advertise a few things that I may be doing this week. This Friday at 5:30, it's April 19th, is Great Oak High School's boys volleyball senior night. We are doing really well. We're a winning team, so we would appreciate it if you guys could all make it out there. On the 20th, Saturday, I am going to be hosting an Ikahi showcase where all three of the school's Polynesian dance teams are going to be performing. So if you guys want to make it out then too, that would be amazing. So come on out. Thank you so much.
And Councilwoman Salas?
I also would like to say thank you to the City Hall for hosting this event. It was amazing. Truly, I think I can speak for every single kid up here. Unforgettable experience. I would also like to thank all of our teachers and the school district for bringing us out here. This, like I said, is fabulous. I'm going to do a quick advertisement as well. So at TV this Friday, we're hosting our event called Empty Bowls. It's this Friday, April 19th at 7 o'clock. It's a soup dinner hosted in our mini gym, and all the proceeds we make go to Community Mission of Hope, which will benefit the homeless population here in Temecula. So once again, thank you, everyone. I hope we all have a good rest of our day and meeting.
And Councilmember Owens?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to express my gratitude to the employees and officials of the City Council for extending this opportunity to us. And I'd also like to give a little statement of appreciation for a local project. I live close to Paloma del Sol Park, and I've experienced the benefits of a great HOA that has made this Frisbee golf course that I use almost daily, in fact. And just the beautification of that park has been a great impact on my life and the life of so many other families in that neighborhood in this city. So, thank you.
Thank you. And from Councilmember Ney?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our meeting today. I'd like to just share a quick token of appreciation for the wonderful opportunity that this program has offered each and every single one of us 21 students that have come here today. I think I speak for all of us when I say that this in-depth, hands-on political experience is something so unique that we probably wouldn't have been able to get anywhere else. And I'd like to thank the real council members for allowing us to shadow them these past 2 days. It was an amazing experience. And I'd love to thank the staff for setting this all up and for my AP Gov teacher, Ms. Rubnerth, for allowing me to come on this trip. Lastly, I'd like to thank my fellow students who are all department heads today who prepared the staff report that we're about to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. And I would just like to reiterate the gratitude that my colleagues have expressed so far. I'm so thankful that I was able to come on this trip, thanks to the nomination of my AP Gov teacher, Mr. Slow, and to our school district for allowing this field trip to happen. And again, to the real council members, I think all of us up here have kind of mirrored you guys, especially in your social interactions and close bonds with one another. And it's been really inspiring to see that in local government, to really reaffirm the amount of compassion and effort that's being put in at every level. So thank you again. Moving on, we will be starting our council business. The only item is item number 1, provide general direction regarding the adoption of regulations related to short-term vacation rentals, otherwise referred to as STRs. At this moment, we'll be having our staff reports. Please come up.
Hi. First off, I'd like to thank Madam Mayor and the council for coming out today, along with everybody else. And to start off, let's not waste any time and let's carry on straight to what short-term rentals are. First off, a short-term rental is basically a house that operates as a pseudo hotel. You have people that own houses, or they might own a second house where they'll rent it out to other people who may just come for vacation, for weddings, etc. But usually you have two sort of short-term rentals. You have non-hosted ones in which the person who is renting out the house doesn't even live in the house. They just rent it out and other people come and go, versus a hosted one in which people just, they stay in the house along with guests in the house. And we're just gonna be, I'm gonna be providing the framework of what, the issues are regarding this rental. So moving on forth to the general jurisdiction of the short-term rentals, this doesn't include Wine Country, Morgan Hill, or Deleuze. It's usually seen in actually our own neighborhoods. You might have some in your local neighborhood, depending on, the general atmosphere. You might notice there might be a bunch of cars, there might be people coming in and out. And the County of Riverside regulations apply in those areas. But I think one thing is worth noting is the fact that the Riverside County, each city is different, so we're mainly focused on why it's not, or why it may be fit for Temecula. And then moving on forth to the current regulations in Temecula itself, short-term rentals are prohibited, but one major issue is the fact that we still keep seeing them occur. Even though they're illegal and there are current regulations on it, you might get a fine or something, people are still doing it underhandedly. And then moving on, let's look at the current state of STRs. There have been at least 223 STRs in the city itself, and there have been at least, this is more recent information, 400 STRs in the city itself, which is actually quite a lot when you think about it. And it keeps on increasing. There's been a 13% increase over the last year, and with tourism booming in Temecula, it's only expected to go up more. And moving on to how many non-hosted versus hosted there are, you have at least 65% non-hosted rentals and then 35% hosted rentals. And usually these are seen usually operating during the weekend. So maybe families that are staying home, for example, during the weekend, trying to spend time or maybe just get some, get proper sleep. They're complaining about the noise, etc. Their children can't sleep, and we'll just move on from that and go into that in a bit more later. And the usual estimated amount of annual nights rented is, it's usually, well actually what we see here is it's usually at least a month, or perhaps almost half of them are usually greater than 120 nights per year. So we don't know what families are coming in here, and we'll go more into that later. And that's generally what I have to present, and I'll be moving it to my Community Development Director, Maverick Villon. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you, Melissa. So now we're gonna really delve into what's the issue here and why are we talking about this right now. So when we reached out to the community, we actually reached out to the community, we talked to them, we've had sessions and surveys asking them, hey, how do you guys feel about STRs and what issues do you feel are presented through them? And then so some of the notable issues that continually came up was the noise complaints, the fact that there are events and parties ongoing late into the night, the parking issue since there are so many cars coming to the streets and just parking everywhere, trash from the parties and other issues like that, and then of course the safety of families and people there since they're just strangers and we don't really know them. And then so basically the non-hosted short-term rentals which don't have anybody watching, which doesn't have the owner there at all, are essentially operating like an unstaffed hotel in a residential area. So basically no regulations for them, honestly, and they can just do whatever they want next to our families and our communities in Temecula. And then so we also have a sample listing up here. This is directly from an STR listing in Temecula. It states that there is a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom, and sleeps 20 plus. And so that really shows the amount of people that can possibly live in an STR and the amount of people that can really come towards one. And you can imagine how many cars it could be as well. And then so in the same listing, it listed that this home's garage has been transformed into a 600 square foot game room with pool table and dartboard, which kind of shows the party aspect of the STRs and how it can be used as a party and how complaints can be common throughout those. And also such as a rehearsal dinners, family reunions, and 50 guests. So basically, the STRs are treated like a party facility at times, and it really bothers some of the residents here in Temecula. And then, of course, at the end there, you can see you may park your car easily in the street outside the property, which is an inconvenience to the neighbors because if you're parking on the street because it's just your daily thing because you live there, and then all of a sudden you can't and you have to park down to the next street, that's such a hassle for the residents here. And it's just something that they don't necessarily want to deal with at times. And then so another issue that has arisen was with the police, of course. So here is some police data regarding phone calls towards only one house. So this is, of course, one of the worst case examples. Many of them could and could not be like this. And then so most notable to look at with the police calls is just the times that it occurs. 2:11 a.m., 12:38 a.m. These are all happening late night when people, like kids are trying to study for finals, when parents who work early morning jobs are trying to sleep. Noise is a prominent issue that STRs can kind of influence in the future. And then so kind of continuing with our community outreach, of course, we had an overwhelming amount of feedback supporting the regulation. 44.8% said that rentals should be prohibited in general. They just shouldn't be here. No MPRs, excuse me, in STRs, excuse me again, in Temecula at all. And then 43.3% said STRs should be in Temecula, but with regulations. And so add that together, 87% of respondents feel like there should be regulations, which there really aren't any right now, except that it's illegal. And then so based on the previous city council direction and kind of the community outreach, the staff has developed a hosted short-term rental framework. So delving into it, so hosting, so we want to require that the owner must be in the STR from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. to kind of watch over it and kind of have ownership of their property and what's occurring there. And then the noise, it has to match the noise ordinance, which is quiet hours after 10 p.m. So just having quiet hours after 10 p.m. for the community. Parking, guests may not use the street parking. They may use their driveways and other kind of parking available on the property, but not on the street. Occupancy, so 2 guests per bedroom. So this prevents any large kind of draws towards the housing and like overpopulating the house at times. And then we don't include the kitchens, dining rooms, or garages in the occupancy calculation. And then so the duration, so the amount of days per year that an STR can be used is 120 days per year maximum. So this prevents any kind of just using an STR too much in a community to the point where it's kind of bothersome. And then signage, signage will follow residential standards. And then kind of tagging along with that, the homeowners association or HOA approval must be required for it to be valid in the neighborhood. And furthermore, for a framework for the host responsibility, we would like to implement a 3 strikes program, which include fines as well as other punishments. And then also a platform responsibility. So hosting platforms like Airbnb and VRBO, they should be held accountable for having illegal listings and kind of influencing illegal activity in Temecula. So we would like to fine them $1,000 per illegal listing, as well as we would like to require a permit for the STRs. So the permits must be visible to the public, and then there will, of course, be a fee. However, that fee will, of course, be fair and efficient. And then also a transient occupancy tax, a TOT. We'd require them to pay that, and later on when the finance department speaks, they will speak further on that. And then so, I would like to hand off the mic to our fire prevention department with Fire Captain Lorena Ailman.
Just first, really quickly, we have Councilmember Nay with a question.
So these framework for protecting the neighborhoods, they're good ideas, but how would we enforce and require these permits? Would we work with like the companies like Airbnb or VRBO themselves, or what about people who aren't necessarily using apps? They're more kind of like under the table listings. How would we enforce that?
I feel like that'd be a great question to direct towards the police chief.
Good answer.
Yeah, we can reopen that one up for discussion at the final questions. One initial question, Spencer. Councilman Boondock, did you have one?
All right, so this question is in regards to one of the framework guidelines that you guys have proposed. The hosting, requiring hosted short-term rentals. It says here that the owners must be on site from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. If, let's say, this is their, I guess, their side job, and they have other means of income, and they have work required to do within this time, would we allow that, and how would we enforce that?
Regarding the host being on site from 9?
Yes.
So mainly, I feel that, so with hosting, it's essential that I feel like SDRs are only a huge issue when they become an issue. And then so if there's a noise complaint or multiple noise complaints, then when the police get involved, they can, if they become an issue on site, then police can constantly check in on that house. However, if an STR isn't an issue and we don't need to check up on them, I feel like that rule is being enforced. And so if there is an issue, then the police can ensure that the owner is there.
Okay. We'll keep it, we'll now go to the, what was the fire department next now?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and then they can start their staff report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, the City of Temecula currently has an inspection program that inspects all businesses, multifamily residents, apartments, hospitals, and schools. With the introduction of short-term rentals, or STRs, these residences would need to be inspected initially just to give them a certificate of occupancy. And, thank you. The owner could avoid any additional yearly inspections if the residence was kept under 5 units. Those with 5 units or more will be subjected to the annual inspection program as well, where we would inspect the home to ensure fire life and safety items are addressed and it meets the requirement of the California Fire Code. They will also be issued a yearly operating permit depending on the results of these inspections. The fire department will look at residential fire sprinklers if the home was equipped with them, exits, signage, lighting, fire alarm monitoring systems, fire extinguishers, smoke alarms, and door hardware. I would now like to direct it over to the fire chief, and that is Mr. Pajari.
Thank you, Fire Captain Aleman. So the fees for these types of inspections would be hourly based on size and complexity of the inspection required. As an example of possible modifications that could cost the homeowner money and time would be the homes that are currently not sprinkler based on when the home was built. And this change in occupancy may require the homes to be retrofitted with a residential fire sprinkler system and to meet all life safety requirements within fire code. These inspections will require additional fire prevention staffing to handle the increased inspections that the STRs will bring to the city. Our staff recommendation is that to keep the occupancy under 5 units and to have the owner live in the residence full-time during the rentals. This would have less impact on the owner as they would not be required to make any modifications for the residents. And if the owner decides to have more than 5 units, they will be required to make modifications to the residence, and this would be addressed on a case-by-case basis. We also recommend that although homes with less than 5 units are not subject to annual inspections, we still encourage them in order to keep things safe because fire extinguishers could be removed, the accessibility of exits could change, etc. Regardless of the number of rooms rented, an annual operating permit will also be required under our annual inspection program for public space safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Fire Chief. So now we will hand it over to the Community Services Department with Community Service Director J.D. Park.
Thank you, Mr. Vallon. Hello, honorable members of the City Council. My name is J.D. Park, and I will be presenting with my Superintendent Emma Brennan the effect of applying the transient occupancy tax to all short-term rentals currently under consideration and what effects that will have on our department's domain. Firstly, 24% of all those experiencing homelessness live in California, and 69% of that subsect were found to be in unsheltered locations. Due to the continued effort of the City of Temecula and partner agencies, the point-in-time count has indicated a steady decline in individuals experiencing homelessness on our streets. The 2017 PIT number was 85, and in 2018 it was reduced to 66. Locally, a core of 35 individuals experiencing homelessness have been identified as ours, meaning a person with Temecula roots, born and raised in Temecula, generally speaking. Although slow, this is the correct approach in reaching functionally zero individuals experiencing homelessness. Throughout the nation, the state, and our city, the percentage of those experiencing homelessness with mental illness and substance abuse is believed to be near 95%. With that being said, Temecula's homeless outreach team officers would concur that our local individuals do indeed suffer from these same challenges. With limited resources available from the County of Riverside, it has become clear that cities must take on this responsibility in order to mitigate the socioeconomic issue. Clearly, this is an issue that both our city and California at large have to deal with. Because of this, should the transient occupancy tax be applied to all SDRs, it is the recommendation of the Community Services Department that a portion of these funds be dedicated to addressing homelessness in Temecula. SDRs would have a negative effect on the current homelessness in situation by both increasing real estate prices and the rates of rent of long-term rentals would also be affected as well. The transient occupancy tax would disincentivize this behavior, so it will have less of an effect on homelessness. With the surplus revenue generated from this tax, our department could contract mental health and substance abuse professionals to help people who are experiencing homelessness and recover from these issues and re-enter the workforce and society at large. A decrease in homelessness by helping these people will ensure that Temecula remains an attractive place for tourism in the future. At this time, I would like to turn things over to my superintendent to speak to the specifics of our proposal.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Emma Brennan and I am the Community Services Superintendent. I feel it's important to note the strategies we have already implemented to assist those experiencing homelessness, including the Homeless Outreach Team, regional collaboration, the Help Center, and other programs such as those. However, we still have a few programs we would like to implement, such as the counseling programs previously mentioned. Looking more closely at our plan to fund mental health and substance abuse counseling, we realize that our goals may not be achievable at first due to our budget, but we would still like to start with some smaller steps. A best practice approach is to provide mental health component identified as resource gap by Temecula's homeless outreach team officers. The goal is to have both part-time mental health counselors Mondays and Wednesdays with office hours from 9 to 5, and a substance abuse counselors on Tuesdays and Thursdays with the same hours, both at the Temecula Help Center. The hourly pay will be $25, which amounts to $200 a week, and $10,400 a year, $20,800 for both. If proven that the counseling program is effective and within our budget, we could expand the counseling to a full-time job. However, seeing as the original goal may not be within our budget, the days available for each counselor could be restricted to Monday for the mental health and Tuesday for the substance abuse, with a reduction in office hours from 10 to 4. The cost would then amount to $15,600 annually combined. If proven effective and in budget, again, we could increase the office hours to the original intended plan gradually. In addition to these counseling programs, we propose the use of a landlord incentive program similar to that used in San Diego. This program will help diminish the effects of the short-term rentals, they would have on affordable housing by encouraging landlords to help those experiencing homelessness or on the brink of it. Additional incentives may include staff to provide customer service to landlords, up to $500 for each accommodation leased to veterans experiencing homelessness, and various forms of security deposits for those landlords in case of damages or loss of rent. With the counseling and incentive programs, we believe that the adoption of regulations for the short-term rentals will prove to benefit the community of Temecula. Thank you.
Because of all the topics previously mentioned, it is a recommendation of the Community Services Department that should the transient occupancy tax be applied to all STRs, that some of the proceeds be used to fund our efforts to help combat homelessness. This is the policy that fits most in line with the goals and vision that our department has for the city of Temecula. At this time, I'd like to conclude my remarks.
So now we'll pass it on to the police department with Police Lieutenant Carly Baldwin.
As businesses and short-term rentals are rapidly growing in Temecula, we are forced to address the consequences allowing these businesses to operate within our suburban community. As members representing the police department, Ms. Filippi and I must look at the potential safety risks involving the business of short-term rentals to continue in our city limits. I'd like to address Ms. Filippi onto the floor to talk about these risks.
Thank you, Lieutenant Baldwin. So many of the problems that us law enforcement could face having to do with these Airbnbs would be a citizen's quality of life problems. Two of the main ones would be noise complaints because large parties do tend to stay in these type of rentals, and also an increase in traffic along with lack of parking, especially in areas that attract the most tourism. Now, these potential issues could lead to other more extreme issues. Some of these could include the potential increase in narcotic use and public intoxication. These could begin to snowball into larger problems, such as potential for physical violence, since there is a large correlation between violence and substance use, as well as a potential increase in drunk driving. The most extreme possibility that could come from these rentals could be a rise in prostitution due to the fact that regulating these STRs is a very difficult task, considering the fact that law enforcement would have difficult time telling the difference between an STR and a regular house being called out only once. Now we do not have very much data on this business, so all of these are potential issues, and some may seem extreme, but we are using our experience with hotels in Temecula as a main resource with the closest connection to an STR to get our information. We respond to calls at hotels involving all of these problems, and STRs are extremely similar to hotels, so the problems we may face will most likely be similar as well. and I'd like to pass it back to Ms. Baldwin to give our suggestions on what we could possibly do.
Although there are some safety and quality of life concerns involving the short-term rental business, we as representatives of the police department remain a neutral stance on allowing STRs to continue within our city limits. If the council may choose to approve the continuation of short-term rentals within Temecula, we have several suggestions to limit the infringement on the Temecula citizens' daily lives. First, we suggest that homeowners that would like to rent out their homes on the short-term basis receive a permit and be identified by the city as an STR. Second, homeowners may be required to have special insurance to be certified as a short-term rental. Thirdly, owners of STRs should be required to document all guests because currently there are no means to gauge what tenants are staying within these rentals. Lastly, we suggest the access to background screening to homeowners that are viewing potential guests to stay at their STRs. This would assist in both the identification of the guests while ensuring the safety of the homeowner, tenants, and the Temecula locals. We hope you take this all into consideration when making a decision on the short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin. And now we will move into the Public Works Department with Public Works Civil Engineer Adriana Mahadeo.
Hello and good morning, council members. So, according to their statistics, about 88% of Airbnb reservations are for groups of 2 to 4 people, and 60% of those reservations are for the entire home. Because of this, we can assume that the average Airbnb would generate the same amount of traffic and trips as a regular household in Temecula, which is about 10 trips per household. In these cases, traffic and parking would not be impacted by short-term rentals. However, in cases where single rooms are rented out by the host, the rental would act as a hotel. In Temecula, the average house has about 6 rooms, and the average hotel generates about 4 trips per room per day. Assuming that the house is acting as a hotel and that the host resides in one of the rooms, the short-term rental would generate about 20 trips per day. Taking into account factors such as the rooms not all being rented at the same time and the variation of the amount of people per room, we can assume that the traffic will not always be at its maximum. Thus, traffic will only be slightly impacted by these. The only problem that could affect traffic is when the host hosts a grand event, which the Public Works Director will be speaking about.
Thank you. So with these major events, they normally have a high volume of guests. And so if we took the example of there being 50 guests in an event and they all came in their own cars, there would be a great shortage of parking space or curb space for all those cars to be on one street, not to mention the traffic that would be coming in and out of this street, and usually at later hours of the night, which is when these events are held. And so it would be impossible for this to not have a really big impact on a neighborhood. And so to combat these traffic and parking issues, we would suggest having hosted only rentals because that would reduce the chances of there being these big parties and these big events. So this disruption would be lessened. And in other cities, there are restrictions for the number of guests that are allowed per room, and if we took on a similar restriction, like Mr. Vallon said previously, of 2 guests per room, or having even a general, the amount of guests per house that was allowed, that would also reduce the parking issues that would come from there being guests coming in and out of the houses. Thank you.
And now we will pass it on to the Information Technology Department with Information Technology Director Mackenzie Clemens.
Thank you. One of the main issues is locating all of the short-term rentals in Temecula. Most rental sites like Airbnb do not reveal the address until a buyer signs in and pays. This makes it very hard to track everyone participating in STRs. There is a software that we can buy to solve this problem. This technology searches hundreds of rental sites to find ads with pictures of houses in Temecula up for rent. The software then uses Google Street View and other sites to match the picture to an address. The system then records the address onto a list. It will provide updated reports every week. We have contacted cities like Carlsbad, San Diego, and Coronado who use this program, and they reported that the software helped to track the short-term rentals in this area. I'm now going to pass it to my colleague, Alex.
If we decide to utilize this application system to identify and locate these STRs, the next step is to notify these owners to either register for a license or to stop. The system will enable a mobile or web form that makes the registration easy and accessible by streamlining the required documents to these STR operators. It also provides a compliance monitoring system that continuously monitors these short-term rentals for zoning and permit compliance and contains a systematic outreach to warn illegal short-term rental operators of the fines that may be charged if they decide to continue. The rental activity monitoring system that is also provided will present us with evidence against these defiant STR operators with tax fraud and initiate tax audits obtained from signs of rental activity. In regards to the complaints filed by neighbors of rowdy STR inhabitants or an observation of an illegal STR, a 24/7 staffed hotline will be provided to resolve non-emergency complaints or problems. If reporting is non-urgent, Temecula residents can always file their complaints through our very own City of Temecula app. Now back to IT Director Clemens to conclude our report.
This system will allow us to easily control short-term rentals. It ensures consistent compliance and enforcement. It will streamline fee collections from permits as well as fines. This hotline is able to handle most complaints before they reach the police to free up their time. If we decide to implement these features, it will cost us about $25,000 per year.
Thank you, Ms. Clemens. So now our final department, the Finance Department, with Finance Director Sam Ebersol.
Thank you, Director Vallon. So the city will generate roughly $605,000 with an 8% transient occupancy tax on short-term rentals. This assumes there is approximately 200 active SDRs operating throughout the year, with an increase to 400 during the summer months, with an average daily rate of $135, escalating to $150 in the summer months. Occupancy rates are projected to be 50% during the year, with an exception to the summer months that will have 75% occupancy. The number of days of rentals will range between 15 and 23 during the year, which also raises during the summer months. This would bring the total SDR revenue to about $7.5 million, and with an 8% TOT, the city would receive just over $600,000 annually. The total number of code enforcement officers the city could afford would be 4, considering the average salary and benefits is $110,000, as well as a supervisor who has an annual salary and benefits of about $153,000. The total cost of 4 CEOs and a supervisor would be about $593,000. We also need to take into account that all SDR hosts would need to purchase a business license at about $35 a year. So that would bring the average revenue to about $10,000 for that as well. So the overall revenue would come to about $615,000 that the city would receive. So that would also leave with affording 4 CEOs and a supervisor. That would leave the city with $22,000 in the tax revenue. Now, that would be up to decide how many, if we use code enforcement officers, and if not, we could also, at the discretion of the council, they could allocate these funds to a possible homeless program or other programs that they feel could regulate the STRs. Thank you.
All right, and with that, the staff is looking for feedback on proposed framework for regulating hosted short-term rentals. And that concludes the staff's report.
Thank you. Do Councilmember Salas like to speak?
Yes, hello. I would just like to refer back to the question that Ms. Councilwoman Nay asked when you were talking about the frameworks that the renters had to go through. How would we keep track of that and how would we enforce that? You said that would be enforced to the police, but I don't understand how we would still do that. Oop, that happened. I don't understand how we would enforce that. Do you have any recommendations or any ideas for it?
I personally would have to look into that a little bit more and would have to do a little bit more research to get back to you guys, but I will definitely mark that and make sure that I will get back to you guys on that question.
And Mayor Pro Tem Boondock would like to speak?
I have a question regarding the police chief as well. Has the amount of noise complaints or police calls increased since STRs have been more prevalent in Temecula?
For that, I would also have to get back to you on that. We haven't seen a huge increase, but also it is difficult for us to know the difference between a regular house noise complaint and an STR noise complaint. But I can look at the numbers for increase while STRs have gotten more popular.
And Councilmember Owens?
I have a question for Mr. Vion. Or you gave the example of the house that you had an example of with the 600-foot square garage with like the ping pong table and darts and stuff like that. That's obviously larger than a normal track home, say. So are the majority of these STRs located in track home neighborhoods, or are they farther away from their houses?
I personally don't have...
You can defer that to someone else. Too,
if any of the other departments have any input on that, they can speak up now. But for me, I don't have that information, but I'll make sure to get back to you, the council, with that.
It's actually, yeah, they are closer to those homes. The track homes. Track homes? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, standard, smaller neighborhoods, general housing.
Councilmember Nay would like to speak.
So going back to our Community Services Director, J.D. Park, so you were saying that the SGRs could be useful if we implement the homelessness program? Is that kind of, because you were saying they kind of cause a problem for the homeless community, so were you saying that if we implement the TOT tax going part of it towards a homeless program, could you say that in that sense they could become more useful?
Yes, that is the general idea. The growth of short-term rentals does place a strain on the on people who are just getting by. With short-term rentals becoming more popular, it decreases the supply of homes that people would normally have, thus increasing prices and rental rates, which would drive people who are on the edge of homelessness, presumably into homelessness. If there is any additional revenue, that revenue could be used to help combat this. To say where we'd come out as far as homeless positive or homeless negative is hard to say exactly, but that is the theory behind it.
To combat the gentrification, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Boondock?
So regarding the homeless situation, you said that a portion of the tax would go into programs that would help with mental counseling for the homeless people that we have in Temecula. Is that correct?
Yes, and what our people on the ground doing outreach tell us is that there is a gap in mental health services and in substance abuse. And the theory would be is that if we can help people recover from these issues, that they will be much more functional and much more likely to be able to re-enter the workforce, obtain a house, and be contributing members of society, and the whole works.
Do you know how much money that program would need from the tax?
Our initial proposal of having a mental health professional available on Monday with 4 office hours, and a substance abuse professional 4 hours available as well on Tuesday, I believe, came out to $15,600. My superintendent may correct me if I am wrong on that score.
That number was correct for the original intended, for the gradual increase of that program, though our goal is to have both Mondays through Wednesdays with a counselor in office, and that total would be $20,800. But the one that we are willing to gradually increase does start at $15,600. But when looking at the average cost of homelessness, it costs us $1,446 a month per person. So in the grand scheme of things, those the counseling would both be less money as each year went on, and it would be able to let them to go back into the workforce and become functional members of society in that aspect.
And Councilmember Salas?
I'm not quite sure who this question would go to, but I'm thinking possibly finance. Do we have any research on how SDRs in Temecula would affect our hotel industry?
I have not researched on that. I could probably get back to you on that, how the statistics of it. So, yeah.
I have one quick question that I'm not necessarily entirely sure who this would directly go to. I guess generally the ones who were tasked with dealing with the homelessness research, but just to sort of establish and lay a foundation, is there a direct correlation with having STRs and it contributing to homelessness, to where that transit occupancy tax would be more than just a, I guess, meaningful gesture?
Addressing the first part of your question first, yes, there is a link that's been showed in New York. There was a study they did in New York that showed that the increase in the use of short-term rentals did indeed raise the rent in New York by something in the neighborhood of $400. I don't have the paper in front of me currently, but it is somewhere in that neighborhood. So yes, it does place a squeeze. Within regards to research as to how successful our proposal has been in the past, I know Palm Springs has attempted something similar, but I do not have any of their statistics in front of me. If you should want that, I shall try to obtain it.
Thank you, Mr. Park. And then Councilmember Nay?
Okay, going back to the IT director, I had a question about, so that the software you're referring to, how would that would help obviously finding STRs that are being used on apps like Airbnb, VRBO, but how would we find like the more underground ones, like say Craigslist offers, or just ones being offered to people? How would we combat those?
If they're up for rent at any site, they search like hundreds of the different sites, popular or not. But if it's just like an underground deal, there's no way to tell if they're renting their house out.
And going back to the software itself, how exactly, you said that this could help, excuse me, you said that this could help like enforce payments, like on permits and stuff. Like how exactly would that work? Would there be employees that would be charged with doing this, kind of like auditors or something?
Yes, we would use the police to enforce the codes, and the software will keep track of who has registered, got their permits, is paying the proper fees, and if they're not, then we can use the police force to enforce those things.
And I actually had one more question, but that is for the police. So we were suggested to limit parking or even not let Airbnb users park on these streets at all. How would we enforce that? How would we make sure people aren't parking? Because we don't necessarily know who's has what car and who's parking where. So.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue that we would need to solve over time, especially because it is hard to determine which houses are the STRs or not. So we would definitely have to do more research and get a little more intel on how to determine which car is just a car parked there regularly and which car is there for the STR.
I guess I have more of a general follow-up question about the detection of these SDRs. Once again, because I would have some hesitations with, once again, sort of what my colleagues said, I guess, criminalizing those who are just renting out their homes. But there was a mentioning of a hotline, I believe. Was it information technology? Could you go over that once more again?
Yes, so the software that we use has a number for the 24/7 hotline. So neighbors that notice like either a party going on too late next door or a possible STR can call it, and then there'll be staff that can answer that call. And if it's an emergency, they can forward it to the police for them to go check it out. But if it's just like a report, then they can follow up on it.
Okay, and then Councilmember Nay?
Back to the finance director. So you were saying that the revenue brought in by the TOT, would that account for possibly having enough in the budget to pay for that softworks?
That really depends on whether the city decides to implement the use of code enforcement officers. If we use a code enforcement officer to kind of help police focus more on higher crime, then we would use more. We could only afford up to 4 code enforcement officers. If they decide not to, or just use maybe 1 code enforcement officer or less, we would have just under maybe 400, probably about 400,000. It really just depends on how many code enforcement officers they decide to use. So we could have anywhere from 22,000 to 604,000 if they don't even use a code enforcement officer and they just decide to use the police. So we could. It really just depends on how they decide to spend the revenue that they receive from the TOT.
But there is the possibility of being able to afford it with those funds, correct?
Yes, there is a possibility
Thank
that
you.
we could do that.
Okay, I believe our council members have wrapped up our final thoughts on the staff reports for right now, and we'll be opening the floor up to the public comments once again.
Madam Mayor, we have 5 agenda items, and to begin with, we have Crystal Rubnerth, followed by Barbie. Will Crystal Rubnerth please come up to the podium?
Good morning. As teacher Rubnerth, I want to say how proud I am of you guys. This is an amazing experience. As citizen Rubnerth, I want to say that I am a mom of a non-quiet, sticky 4-year-old. And she also happens to have special needs. So when we travel, it's very helpful that we have a kitchen to access. She has a feeding tube, and preparing and storing and delivering food in a hotel room is very difficult. The special needs mom and dad groups really appreciate having these Airbnbs as an option for being able to travel just like a typical family. One concern I do have is that seasonally she's also on oxygen, and we travel with oxygen tanks and portable oxygen concentrators. So I do have a concern with the fire code of not having as many inspections for potential fire extinguishers. If I do take oxygen into a facility, I do want to make sure that there's a current extinguisher, and if there's no system to potentially track that, what if that extinguisher has expired, is no longer good? Is there going to be some kind of a system that can track those extinguishers to make sure that we have it, or no electrical dangers that could be very dangerous for an oxygen tank? So those are my concerns, and I thank you for addressing them.
Our next speaker is Barbie, followed by Pastor Robert Mueller.
Mayor, council members, my name is Barbie, and I am president and CEO of Barbie's Bachelorette Services. Hey! So I organize and plan bachelorette parties all over the Temecula Valley. And let me say, Temecula is a fabulous location for doing that. We have beautiful wineries, we have the brew scene, we have Old Town, a little brunch at the Cheesecake Factory on Saturdays and Sundays, and this girl is happy, along with all my clients. So I am a legitimate business owner, as I do have a business license, a home business license, because this is what I do. I have a couple of concerns in regards to the presentation that was made today. The suggestion that STRs be hosted, that is just downright ridiculous. What if the host is like a downer, right? Like, what if he's like overly religious or something like that and has a problem with girls having a little fun? That just messes with our vibe. I mean, just think, like, what if it's like a pastor or something and he can't get down with the single ladies, you know? Like, that's just no bueno. The hours, 10 p.m. quiet hours, give me a break. That's about when we're popping the champagne corks. So nobody goes out at 5 p.m. and comes home at 9 p.m. and goes to bed when you are out and about and having a good time. So the 10 p.m., absolutely ridiculous. Party doesn't get started until that time. The neighbors complaining, they just need to chill, right? Like, they were young once. Come on. I know 3 kids in and a dog and a white picket fence. Maybe your memory's a little shot, but You once had bachelor parties, bachelorette parties. You brought in all your cousins and had a good time and friends. TOT, you heard a little bit about TOT. It is good to address the homeless population with potential TOT revenue. And you're not gonna have to spend that whole $600 on code enforcement. People can self-police themselves. We don't need a nanny state, so put that whole $600,000 to the homeless program. And keep in mind, if you think about shutting down STRs in Temecula, where are they gonna go? It's still Temecula Valley. They're gonna go to Marietta. And do you really wanna send your money to Marietta? Ew, like that's like so not okay. Popo, no. Big party poopers there. So this is gonna actually go ahead and cause people to have additional problems with narcotics and alcohol and everything else. Are you kidding? Like, build up your tolerance a little bit, buddy, with all of that. That's just ridiculous. And don't tell me you can't tell the difference between a prostitute and a bachelorette. Anyways, I'll just let that one go and move on. Last but certainly not least, traffic. In regards to traffic, most of my clients actually come in, they'll like fly in and take the airport shuttle to the house, or they'll carpool in, and once they're at the house for the weekend, we've either got a limo or a party bus. So traffic is not going in and out. The limo or the party bus is picking us up, taking us everywhere we want, because we're all about safety, so that's not even an issue. Finally, as a business owner, I have certain rights. And I am allowed to go ahead and, with my business license, practice my legal business, Barbie's Bachelorette Services, in case you need to hear it again. And if you prohibit these STRs, you're essentially infringing upon my rights to earn my living. So I don't care if you regulate, but it has to allow us party girls to still party. Thank you.
Next speaker is Pastor Robert Mueller, followed by Ned Flanders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's Pastor Robert Mueller, and I released my report to Congress and the Attorney General today. Did you read it? It's only 400 pages, but I digress. That's not why I'm here today. Actually, I was quite offended by Barbie a few minutes ago. And I am here, why am I here? I cannot support any type of short-term vacation rental. I hear the staff recommendation, hosted, compliance. Frankly, I'm not in favor of regulating or having any type of short-term vacation rentals allowed in the city of Temecula. I represent the faith-based community, and I'm here today because single-family homes were not designed or intended to operate as a hotel. Frankly, the police department, the code enforcement department, they need to begin enforcing and doing their job today. So I ask you not to consider this. Take this completely off the table. Trash is a problem. Noise is a problem. Parking is a problem. Bachelor parties, Barbie is a problem. Just say no. You do not need to make this decision today. Hosted short-term vacation rentals are not the answer. And Madam Mayor, I want to make sure you're looking at me and listening to me. Just say no, okay? You do not need to make this decision today. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Ned Flanders, followed by Jonald T.
Hi diddly ho, neighborinos. My name is Ned Flanders, and I represent a newly formed action group called DANS, D-A-N-S, Dads Against Naked Swimming. My neighbors, you might know them, big, tall, blue-haired lady. They operate a short-term rental. They recently put in a pool. Now I have to put up with pool parties that go late into the night. Lately, they've turned into skinny dipping parties. Crowds of people running around naked. My kids should not have to be exposed to a bunch of nude strangers running around in the backyard, partying, drinking, hooting, and hollering. I've had to board up their windows so they don't have to look down into this backyard about all the drunken debauchery that's going on back there. I think she's part of it. I think she's been back there. I don't know. I don't look down there. Please, please, listen to that last guy that spoke. You don't have to do anything. It's already illegal. Do your job. Get your staff to do their job. Don't make any decision today. Keep the things the way they are. They're forbidden. Please, 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 get rid of this drunken debauchery in my backyard. Oakley dokley.
Our final speaker, Madam Mayor, is Jonald T. Will Jonald T. please come to...
Hello, everyone. I'm Jonald T. I'm a real estate mogul here in Temecula. I have a fantastic SDR. Actually, what I call it is super terrific resort, because you can do everything at my STR. Oh, hey, Barbie. It's good to see ya. We're still on for tomorrow? All right. Well, I could sit here. I could tell you all about my STR, but I thought I could just show you a little video I made on my iPhone 4. Let's see if it will connect. Ready? Come stay at the best short-term rental in Temecula, La Croche-Pas. Located in the heart of Harveston, this 2,000 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath is your perfect getaway. Whether you have a family of 6 or 60, everyone has a place to sleep. And look around, there's parking everywhere. Throw a party for your best friend. Plan a beautiful wedding. Have theme nights like Mardi Gras. Practice with your band. Or just celebrate Arbor Day. Our backyard is perfect for having weddings, or shooting some basketball, or raising chickens, or working on your PowerPoint presentation that your boss is having you do on Monday morning. Spend some time at our beautiful pool, or laying out in the cabanas eating ice cream. Or use Snapchat to send pictures of pineapples to all your friends. Our game room has thousands of games to play, like Dance Dance Revolution, poker, roulette, blackjack, billiards, and even skee-ball. We recently converted the garage to an intimate club with a sound system that rivals Vegas. Are you hosting a large group? Then open the garage door and have it instantly transform into a Coachella experience. Located near hiking trails, beautiful wine country, cities like Los Angeles, places like Disneyland, beautiful SeaWorld, Marietta Creek, and then finally, Hemet. We are baby friendly, dog friendly, cat friendly, animal friendly, and even robot friendly. To be courteous of our neighbors, quiet hours are from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m., so feel free to use one of our provided headphones. Optional upgrades include daily housekeeping, and a piano guy that only plays Billy Joel music, world-class catering, cell phone charging, but only if you have an iPhone, or knife juggling. You can add complimentary free Wi-Fi for just $10.99 a day. Book your STR with us today on Airbnb, HomeAway, VRBO, or just use Craigslist. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, that was our final speaker.
Thank you, City Clerk. And now we'll be opening it up for discussion amongst the council members. And council members, we're free to ask questions amongst the staff and the public commenters. So, I guess my first thought, and this is kind of commenting on Mr. Flanders' comment during his presentation, was that had there been a complaint system readily available to you, would you have formally just filed a complaint then? I have. And Councilmember Salas?
That's where I think the hotline would come in handy. That's this attachment to the police department, and this one is specifically for STRs. So I feel like that can really be beneficial.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, though, there definitely needs to be some more research regarding that direction, especially in what kind of protocols especially money regarding, because we only would have, I believe, the finance director or police chief mentioned only 4 code enforcers would be available, plus the CEO. I think there definitely should be a little bit more research regarding protocols and what to do, and especially for potential abuse of the hotline, because we wouldn't be able to have the hotline whirring on hours where we'd have to staff people to be readily available to take those calls. Councilmember Nay?
I think we should also do some more research on how to enforce these things, because I feel like all the ideas could be very beneficial, but without proper enforcement, they could just be ideas in the air. So that should be the focus of the research, in my opinion.
Right, I know we heard the sort of mentality where, well, if there's no complaint, they must be following the guidelines, but I also feel like there should be regulations, but not to the point where it's being a burden rather than looking out for the safety of citizens.
We also have to address maybe the other residents that have complaints or problems with these STRs but haven't formally formed or filed a complaint with the police or called in to our police. So we have to take into account the people that are still bothered by this but haven't spoken up about it.
I agree, because I think looking into the size and the volume of that, where we necessarily haven't gotten to see, I believe it was, we didn't know how many complaints have occurred since the rise of STRs. I think it'd be really important to see how big that is, because a big question we're faced with this year is, should those TOT funds, the transit occupant tax, go more towards that homelessness initiative or towards code enforcers to be able to regulate all these things that we're proposing here?
I believe with our total revenue, in fact, we could spend money on the homeless mental counseling, as well as code enforcement officers, right? You said about $400,000 of the TOT would go into the code enforcer funding.
So the code enforcement officers would cost us, I said, we could afford up to 4 of them with a supervisor, and that would be a total of $593,000. But that is with the maximum amount of code enforcement officers, and it will be up to the code enforcement department on how many and if we use these officers or not, which will allow, at the direction of the council, to allocate the funds once you find out the budget, how much revenue is left over for the city to spend on a possible homeless program or IT or whatever is needed for more funds.
Well, before we decide what we're going to be spending the funds on, we first have to decide whether or not we would implement that TOT tax.
Right.
So I definitely see the benefits to providing a disincentive to starting these businesses. There's potential problems that can arise with them, such as those that were described with the debauchery and such. That being the case, I personally would advocate for the installation of this tax. And then after that, we can discuss what we would do with the $600,000 that could potentially arise from that.
I agree with Councilmember Owens. I definitely think that Temecula stands to benefit quite a bit from this type of installation and law with the STRs. I mean, the fact that we can use the TOT tax for the homeless community here is really great, and I feel like that'd be awesome. But one thing that I do kind of struggle with, and I know that Mr. Ebersol is going to get back to us on that, but how this would affect our hotel industry, because I feel like we can stand to lose something with the SDRs and stand to gain something. So I kind of think we have just to find the middle of what we'd be losing and what we'd be getting.
I think another thing to consider is the fact that 600,000 is a rough estimate based on the current number of STRs. However, if we implement the requirement for permits, the number will decrease. Not every single person who uses STRs is going to want to get a permit. They might just drop their STR thing altogether. They're like, it's okay, I don't need to have an Airbnb anymore. And so the number could drop drastically, and that 600,000 may drop to 300,000, and we may not be able to afford having code enforcers, IT software, the homeless program. We might not be able to afford these things because we don't know how the numbers will adjust.
Exactly, and I think that was that's kind of part of the gap in what we would need to research further, especially where to allocate those funds, how much, I guess, would needed to be funded, to what degree for regulations. Another thing was one of the codes was it was the requirement of only having 2 people per bedroom, things like that, where it would be more of an issue to actually, figure out what regulations we'd actually want there versus just benefit of the doubt for certain things.
Well, in terms of regulations and fire code and stuff like that, I'd say that once these homeowners start to treat their home as a business, they should have to comply with business requirements rather than household requirements for fire code and such like that. So therefore, I would be a proponent for finding the allocation of funds, whether or not that's from the TOT tax, but to ensure the safety of transients in Temecula, that we would have to implement increased fire safety within SDRs.
Right, and I think that would sort of lessen that maybe tension between hotels and STRs if they were expected to also comply to more business regulations versus they're making all these profits with so much less actual measures and documentations and certifications that are required for, let's say, a hotel. Because like what one of the public commenters said, he does have a point in the sense that single-family homes aren't meant to be run as hotels for a reason, for the most part. And so I believe we should be coming to some sort of a motion, I believe. Councilman Nay?
At this time, I would like to bring up a motion. I say we have a motion at this time to guide the staff in a motion to research fund allocation, enforcements, and restrictions that would work.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second, and all in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? We have a unilateral motion passed, and now we'll be moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a brief report. We'd like to invite the City Council and the community to an Easter egg hunt this Saturday, April 20th at 10 a.m. There are Easter egg hunts going on at Temecula Hills Park, Birdsall Sports Park, and Harveston Community Park. We encourage you to arrive promptly because the Easter egg hunt will be starting at 10 a.m. and it's open to ages 1 through 12. Additionally, I'd like to invite the mayor, city council, and staff, and the public to attend Empty Bowls, as Councilwoman Lauren Salas mentioned previously. It's a community fundraiser hosted by Temecula Valley High School, and it will be held on Friday, April 19th at 5:30. Tickets are $10, and as mentioned previously, all money goes towards the community and those in need, specifically for those who don't have enough food. It also includes live music, and you get to go home with a homemade ceramic bowl. So I'd encourage you to participate in that with us. Lastly, I'd like to thank the city for hosting us here this week, for sacrificing their time, and for teaching and inspiring future leaders in government.
I'd now like to introduce the Assistant City Manager, Ms. Kristana Roska, who would like to make some remarks.
Thank you. I would like to thank Mr. Arban for giving my classmates and I the opportunity to be a part of this program. I would also like to echo a thank you to the City of Temecula and city staff of all departments for putting together this program and for being so welcoming and informative and active in this program. It's been a really wonderful experience.
Thank you. I know that all of us, again, we've expressed this so many times, but we're so grateful for what this program has been able to provide for us. If we wanted to give the city a round of applause, perhaps. And for the sake of time, we call this meeting to adjourned.